all my friends, colleagues, students, and friends sitting in the audience. Dr. Neelam Sahib, the unit chief of the department. Today we have an eminent speaker, Dr. Vikas Nehru, who will be giving us a very informative lecture. And nowadays we all know that if you see everybody, the people, like whichever place you go, you will see cell phones in their hands. So I feel at times certain gadgets has got advantages. In addition to that, they have certain disadvantages also. So Dr. Vikas will be highlighting on the side effects basically of the cell phone. And Dr. Vikas Nehru is an otolaryngologist and head and neck surgeon. Currently positioned as a specialist ENT surgeon and specialist plastic surgeon and head and neck surgeon in the Department of City of Century Clinic, Majid Ali Healthcare Center of Dubai. Prior to this, he worked as associate professor at the Department of Otolaryngology and head and neck surgery at the Postgraduate Institution of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, India. Dr. Nehru published a book, Global Wireless Spider Web, in 2016, and the book deals comprehensively with health impacts of wireless radio frequency radiations. I think we all are aware that cell phones, they emit radio frequency, so that is very harmful to our health, So Dr. Nehru has been a teacher for environmental epidemiology, certified by Ministry of Environment, Government of India in collaboration with WHO and United Nations Environment Programme. Dr. Nehru has been trained in science technology for teachers of health professionals. So I think with this introduction, I would request Dr. Vikas to start with the lecture for which all of us are eagerly waiting.
Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. My name is Vikas, as you just heard. I'm really grateful to the ENT department and the benevolent set of KEM for this honorable opportunity. Next. Well, I'll be discussing the subject, and while I was going through literature, I just came across a slide which I thought might interest you. This slide actually represents causes of death in the year 1811. That's 200 years ago. It appeared in 2012 issue of New England Journal of Medicine. More than 200 years ago. In Texas, they published a review of 942 cases of people who had died in a previous specified period. I think 2 years, I'm not too sure about that figure, but probably 2 years prior to 1811. What strikes you as you go through this particular slide is that you do not see any cases who died of diabetes or hypertension, but you do see the bulk of patients died of consumption, which was the previous name for tuberculosis. And people were dying because of stillbirth, because of lightning strike, because of snake bites, because of natural causes. And the majority of the deaths, and even the substantial people, there was this type of super old age. But you don't see, if you see the modern killers in health, these are, as you know, the heart disease and cancer, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and I'm very sorry to add, these are published statistics, that iatrogenic illnesses which are resulting from use of pharmaceutical drugs. And it ranks pretty high in the list as the cause of death. So where are we 200 years later? See, the point that I'm trying to make is that the last 200 years, because of industrialization, the nation states have made a lot of progress. We are all aware of that. And as a matter of fact, we in this 21st century happen to be the generation who are enjoying the fruits of industrialization that was happening in the last 100 years, last 200 years. But then, there are new health challenges that arose as a consequence of industrialization. You see, industrialization and its products, there's a big game played between corporations and governments. Of course, because it's an extremely, apart from being of value to our lives, it's also a very profitable area of enterprise for corporations and nation states. And therefore, it is pretty much in their interest to downplay the flip side of the industrialization. The fact of the matter is that there are a handful of people in the area of toxicology who have been interested in doing research in those areas where the products of industrialization have become a cause of ill health. And their voice is small, their number is small, and whenever they try to raise the concern about these things, the voice has been suppressed because of a number of reasons. I don't really go into that. But this handful of people, this genuine, honest scientists, researchers who want this information about the health impact of industrialization, they want to bring it to public domain, and I'm trying to do a bit of their cause. So of all the industrial products that have come,
water?
If I can give you a glass of water. So, of all the products that have come in, the smoking was a big issue in the previous century. But when most of the people were born, they already saw back of the packet it was written that it's injurious to health and cause malignancies. But at the time when researchers were fighting the cause to have the label put on the back of cigarette packs, there was a tremendous amount of resistance. The fact of the matter is that it took scientists almost 50 years to fight with the governments to have the label affixed on the back of the cigarette pack. And hopefully we are in the business of doing something now, and it will lead to something perhaps in the next 20 to 30 years. I got interested in this particular area because of all the other things, by the way, the smoking, the pesticides, dioxin. The one which is more relevant today is the non-ionizing microwave radiation that emanates from a number of devices, and one of that device is in the pocket of all of us, including my own. And that actually is a bigger concern, much bigger than, by the way, the concern about pesticides, much bigger concern than smoking. Because this is one thing that practically every one of us has. All those other toxic effects are limited to certain groups. To talk about pesticides, it's an agricultural class. I'm not directly exposed, although I do get exposed because I do not eat organic food every day. So I do get exposed to pesticides indirectly, but there are some who are directly exposed. This is one particular industrial toxin, if I may say so, that is in the pocket of each one of us. As you probably, some of you might know, that GSM runs a live tracker. It is live it is updated every minute, and every second actually, which gives you the number of devices, the cell phones, the smartphones, the not so smartphones, the other devices, the Wi-Fi router, the whole lot of devices which are run on wireless radiation, the number of those devices which exist today. And if you look at that live tracker, it runs faster than the tracker of population of India. And as of the last visit that I made to that website, which was just about 3 days ago, that number was 8 billion plus, which is 1 billion more than the human population. So it's a huge number of devices. And the predictions are that in the next 5 years, we will probably have trillions of those devices, because there are some new technologies similar to this which are going to be launched, One of them was reported in the news yesterday that Indian government has decided to launch 5G. You know, the 3G and 4G is not good enough, but 5G, we'll talk a little bit about that later if we have time. And so trillions of these devices are going to be around us, which means we'll have many fold random radiation all around us. Even if you're not somebody who's using a cell phone, you're still exposed because radiation is around. I got interested in this particular area about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. In fact, because I met this gentleman, he was an acoustic engineer working in a television company. And he suffered from several illnesses, several symptoms, which I'm sure many of my colleagues in EMT see every other day, such as dizziness, running sensation around the ears, vague sensations in the head. He actually said, as if I'm riding a wave in the ocean. Insomnia, headache, tinnitus, chronic fatigue, muscle aches, delayed reaction time, reduced libido, distraction, poor memory, inattentiveness, wobbly gait. And I ran the regular mill of tests as most of us do. And everything from the neurological examination, takes all by tests, the audiometry, which showed a bit of high frequency loss, but calorics, MRI, brain, routine, everything is perfectly normal. Quite honestly, I didn't have a diagnosis. And quite frankly, I didn't know what to do. He had already spent a lot of money on the investigative part, but when it came to a therapeutic decision, I really didn't have anything to offer. And we talked about Peter is we talk about so many other options that we have. But then he had already used up all the options that were available. I had nothing to offer. So we went a little bit into detail about his professional environment. Now this guy is an acoustic engineer. He is surrounded by devices all around. He uses headphones about 8 to 10 hours a day, about 6 days a week. I gave him a solution which was purely intuitive. And I had no scientific basis to tell him what I did. I actually told him to take 3 months off, leave his job, go to a countryside, take his family, and don't carry your cell phones with you, don't carry your television with you, just stay away. Amazingly, he did that. And I was surprised that he accepted my advice. I didn't expect him to accept my advice. He did. He went away. He came back 3 months later. All of these symptoms had disappeared. Now, this is a classic case of what is now termed as electrohypersensitivity. And electrohypersensitivity has recently been included in International Classification of Diseases. Do we use ICD codes here? Yes. For diagnostic codes? Yeah. So if you're using ICD codes, there is an ICD code for electrohypersensitivity. So you can ask for an insurance claim if you like, although they will reject it. So the ICD code is W90. That's a new code that has been added to ICD-10. Can I have the next slide? Just 2 minutes I want to spend on this, because this slide and the next 2 slides, they actually tell us about where are our national priorities. You see, when the industrialization started 200, 250 years ago, you can imagine how we lived. And in those days, when governments were elected, the priorities were the roads, the electricity, water. When Lenin became president of whole USSR, he was bring it to the front. He was asked. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's nice. Thank you. I'm not a very tech-savvy person actually. So when Lenin was asked, not that long. Lenin to go as president of USSR, and he was asked this question by journalists, what are your priorities, to help the society? And he raised his 2 fingers. He said, communism, electricity. The second priority, electricity. And so the priorities actually, the last 2 centuries, electricity, roads, the water, money, bijli sadak, as we say. But today's generation and today's time, if you ask, probably the priorities are cell phone, and that also not 4G but 5G, followed by Pani Billi Song. So that's how the priorities have changed. You see, the nations have not fulfilled their priorities. If you look at this map, actually, that yellow area showing most of the Africa still lives without water. This is the water map of the world. In India, the light blue, that is about 70%. The Western world and Australia, New Zealand, those blue areas, 100% water supply is there. But in India, it's about 70%. And in Africa, it's still around 50%. So even today, can I go to the next slide? If you look at the electrification, it's more or less similar. Africa is lagging behind the rest of the world. India is something like 70%. Western world is 100%. The next one. If you look at this one, this is the world map last year of cell phone distribution. There is no part in the world that we do not have cell phone. Even in Africa, where there is no water, no electricity, but they have got cell phones. So that's actually gives you a contrast of the nations and politicians about the priorities today, 300 years after the industrialization started. Can I have the next one? And this is 5G has not come yet. 5G is going to come, but last year they projected figures. The blue areas indicate the areas where the trials are going on, and the light blue area, which is our country, India, the research is going on. But yesterday the government announced that it's no longer research. Now they're setting up forums where actual decisions are going to be made. The date that they have given us is 2020. We will probably have 5G. Can I have the next slide? Now, I just want to say something very, very basic. I know you are waiting me to tell you about how does biology interact with radiation, which is the main reason here. I just want to say a few words later. How does human biology and radiation, they interact? What happens? What happens at the cellular level? What happens at the biochemical level? What happens to our genes? You see, the fundamental thing that I want to tell you before I go on to that area is this. More than 13 billion years ago, when the planet first came into existence, there was no life. There was a planet, but there was no life. In fact, for next 10 billion years, there was no life. The first signs of life started about 3 billion years ago. And they started in the bottom of the ocean in the form of blue algae. The blue algae, they used carbon dioxide and sunlight to do photosynthesis. The oxygen was a waste product, so-called, and they released so much of oxygen in the environment. That is the reason we have ozone layer now. That's the reason we have trees and forests now. And that's the reason we are here. So when you say monkeys and apes are our ancestors, that's actually wrong. It is the bacteria, the blue algae, which are our true ancestors, because they gave us oxygen, and oxygen turned this planet into greenery, and the rest of animal life and human life. Human beings, by the way, have been around only for 2 million years. But 2 million years, humans were different from who we are. In our current anthropological form, the human beings have existed only for 200,000 years. So, the Industrial Revolution, now you place it against our history of 200,000 years, and that's the contrast I would want you to imagine in your minds, that against the contrast of 200,000 years, Industrial Revolution came only 300 years ago. The wireless mobile came only 30 years ago. And the wireless Wi-Fi, the one that is the cause of our concern, is only last 15 years within the lifetime of most of you. Can I go to the next slide? The radiation, by the way, is of two broad categories, the ionizing and non-ionizing. As you know, the ionizing, we are all familiar with the X-rays, the gamma rays, and we know that those are harmful. There is no more debate. By the way, there was a time, just like smoking, just like tobacco, there was a time when we didn't know that ionizing radiation is harmful. In fact, Marie Curie died because of her own radium experiments, as you know. Because she didn't know that it's harmful. She knew it's radiation, but she didn't know that it could kill her. She was a friend of Einstein, by the way. So, we know about ionizing radiation. So when the scientific know-how developed about ionizing radiation, and we realized that they can, cleave through the atoms, split the electrons apart, and thereby destroy the DNA and cause cellular stress, When we learned this, we had no hesitation. World Health Organization had no hesitation in calling it a class 1 carcinogenic. So that chapter is closed, that's past. With non-ionizing radiation, on the other hand, is a different ballgame. Non-ionizing radiation does not do that. It does not cleave through the electron, and this fact has been used as an alibi by the corporations, by the industry, by the politicians to tell us, the common citizen in the street, dying in this traffic outside, to tell us that because it doesn't cleave through the electrons of the atoms of your body, all it does is it just heats you up a little bit, and that too, if you use too much of it, therefore it is safe. Not true. Trust me, that's not true. So, because the biological impact of non-ionizing radiation began to be studied when the radar came, because radar uses that. Can I have the next slide, please? So, these are, I'm sure these are the most familiar toys. Most of people would know. I really don't need to talk about that. I don't know whether you know about this one. The round one next to the baby monitor there, which is called a smart meter. And the smart meter is going to replace our utility electric meters very soon. In most of the countries in the West, they've already done it. I read somewhere that Reliance, probably, somebody is going to replace our electricity meters with these meters. These meters are basically run on microwaves. Can I have the next one? Well, that's the visible part. Everyone carrying a cell phone. What I want to talk about is on the other side, what is not obviously visible. Let's talk about that. Can I have the next slide? You know what? How it happened? You know, 3G, 4G. Basically, as they have been upgrading this technology, there are a few benefits from the next version. The major benefit being the download speed. The download speed of 4G was 100 Mbps and it became 1 gigabit, 1 Gbps, 1 gigabyte per second. 5G will offer you 10 gigabytes per second. So that's close to 10 to 100 times faster than the 4G. Why do we need that? You know, we can still watch a movie with 4G. We can still send an SMS or a WhatsApp. We can still, do whatever we want. We can send an email. It's fast enough. But we need 5G, and the reason is not because you can do everything with 4G. The truth is that what you can do with 4G, if you think that's enough, you know nothing. Because what's coming in next 10, 15, 20 years, the download speed of 4G is not going to be enough for the technology of the future. You've probably heard of self-driving cars, which are going to come without the drivers. They are going to become in 5G. So, they cannot be run in 4G. You can have the next slide. That's the reason we need 5G. And the money for the corporation in the future is not in the 4G. It's in the 5G. The background radiation, I just want to give a comparison of the natural background radiation that exists anyway, that has existed for millions of years. It's on the top, CMB, the cosmic microwave background, which is 17 zeros next to the decimal point, which is extremely low, and we are used to that, therefore, that doesn't bother us. If you're 300 feet away from the cell tower, you get 5 microwatts per centimeter square, whereas the American safety standard says that up to 1000 microwatts per second square, you're safe, which is a lie. Can I have the next one? Now, how do they, that's how they set up safety standards. Now, let me give you a little insight into what that is. You see, when you introduce a technology, we need to know from health point of view whether it's going to affect health. Now, this one releases radiation, and we want to say how much exposure to radiation is safe. None of us does it, but if you go through your cell phone details in the settings, you go to the about, you go to legal, you go to about this instrument, you go to the RFR safety protocols followed by the cell phone industry. As you keep going down, one clever thing that they do is they keep on reducing the font size. So where they tell you the radiation of that cell phone, where they tell you keep it at least so much away, at least an inch away in case of BlackBerry, at least half an inch away in case of Apple or something. They keep on reducing the font size so tiny that you have to rub your eyes and you can't read it. but the games, the icons are much bigger. So, according to Federal Communications Commission, which is the American company which is authorized by the government to set some safety standards, and ICNIRP is International Commission of Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection in Europe. These two companies, these two organizations, by the way, they tell us how much is safe, and the rest of the world follows what they say. In India, I'm told that we followed ICNIRP guidelines, and our government, by the way, said that we have reduced it further 10 times. We use 1/10 the guidelines of ICNIRP, and I learned recently that that may be true on paper, that's not true on the roads. So, anyway, so the American says 1.6 watts per kg is safe. ICNIRP says 2 watts per kg is safe. But I want to tell you why this is a sham. This is a sham because this is how, this slide shows actually how to do it. They take the mannequin of a skull, which is equivalent to the skull of a 6 foot 2 inches tall man. Not everybody is that tall. And that doesn't apply to a pediatric case. Because in a child, the same radiation has 153% effect. And they just run the radiation from the cell phone for 6 minutes. And then they'll watch if the temperature of the solution inside that skull is gone, if it is heated up. Can I go to the next slide? This doesn't tell us anything. This is a hoax. Because first of all, this was introduced in '96. The cell phones have changed tremendously since then. So it is no longer applicable. Secondly, it's good only for the heating effects. Thirdly, in spite of what they say, we have proof in research that at much lower levels, they say 1.6 watts per kg, but at 0.1 microwatts per kg, there are biological effects. So there's no way that you can accept that. And in children, it doesn't apply anyway, because children have thinner skulls, they have high rate of metabolism, their brains are growing, so there's a high rate of metabolism, and their brains are not myelinated, by the way. So if you're exposing an unmyelinated nerve tissue to radiation, the impact is going to be different. Lastly, there was no representation from health department when they were setting the safety standards. The safety standards were the business of collusion between engineers and physicists. They are the ones who came up with these figures, but there was not a single doctor, not a single medical scientist, not a single researcher whose views were taken into account, and they used the, their engineering skills to tell whether it is safe for human use. Can I have the next slide? We can go on to the next slide, and I just mentioned that. Now, human body is essentially electromagnetic, and there's plenty of evidence of that. If you really believe in electrocardiogram, you believe in what I'm saying, that human body is electromagnetic. You will not depend on electrocardiogram if this was not true, because electrocardiogram, the way it just measures the electric output of the heart and the magnetic output of the heart. By the way, ECG is becoming an older technology. The newer technology is MCG. It's called magnetocardiogram. And magnetocardiogram is far more sensitive because magnetic fields of the heart and brain are far more stronger than the electric fields. But that technology is still experimental. Can I have the next one? Well, we generally believe that the signal travels between the Wi-Fi router and the cell phone because each one of them has an antenna. But trust me, there's a third antenna in the room, and that antenna is your brain. Your brain, because I just said that we are electromagnetic creatures. I just said that we are electrical beings. We have electrical fields at the cellular level and also outside the body. You see, this new machine called SQUID, I'll have to write my memory exactly what it means. The new machine called SQUID, which actually measures very fine magnetic fields. When they developed this levitating trains in Japan, where the train runs above the tracks a couple of centimeters, based on magnetic field, by the way. And they needed to developing this SQUID. SQUID measures the magnetic field. So they applied it to human beings, and they made a man stand against the SQUID. It tells you how much magnetic field is coming out of the body. They moved the man away. They moved the man 10 feet away. The machine is still picking up magnetic field. So that's the amount of magnetic field that we are generating outside our bodies. You know, आप सभी से देखा होगा पहले के ज़माने में around the Christ there is a halo, around our spiritual masters there is a halo. I don't know if that halo is the electromagnetic field, probably it is. Or the way, you know, why we interact positively or negatively with each other, sometimes socially, something to do with our electromagnetic fields, either attracting or repelling each other. So there is an electromagnetic field. That's why I'm saying that there is a third antenna in the room, the elephant in the room that we know very little about, and the third antenna is us. Because down to the level of cells, we are doing exactly what the receiver of Apple iPhone is doing, that it is receiving the radiation. Can I have the next one? Well, I could. I took it from just what I took it from
Pulse.
Yes. This actually, I think we can skip that. This actually shows, you know, what happens in the first few seconds when you're. But it's important, by the way. First few seconds, you know, if you receive a call, for example, and you find your telephone is ringing, right? You can see who is calling. Or if you make a call and the call is ringing, you're waiting for the other guy to pick up, and you're already walking like this while he picks up. Actually, that's wrong. You should keep looking at it, pick it up, bring it close to you, only when the call is connected, when the other fellow is picked up. And you can hear from a distance, hello. Reason is this, that those couple of seconds while the radiation is going back and forth between two cell phones, the plume of radiation around the cell phone is highest. So when the call is connected, it just drops just a bit. Not zero, but it drops just a bit. So you wait for the call, and then that's basically what this research says. Can I have the next one? Okay, so here we are. Now, there are things that we know about this interaction between us and radiation, and there are things that we do not know. So we must be humble in admitting our ignorance, and I will admit my ignorance in the next slide, but here is what we know. It disrupts circadian rhythm. It disrupts neurology. It has effect on genes, effect on stress proteins, that is heat shock proteins. Heat shock proteins are released in the body to protect the cells. You know, if you're exposed to starvation, to extremes of temperature, those are stress proteins which tend to protect the body. It causes leakage in the blood-brain barrier. You know, blood-brain barrier. There is a barrier in the blood flow of the brain, around the brain. The fine capillaries of the arterial circulation in the brain, they are reinforced by additional layers. The basement membrane is two layers, astrocytes around the basement membrane, and these cell junctions are tightly packed. And the idea is to keep the toxins out of intracranial circulation. Now, that's blood-brain barrier. By the way, there is a similar barrier that exists away from the brain. There is one around the eye circulation, there is one in the ovary, and one in the testis. So eye, ovary, testis, brain, these are privileged organs by the nature. Nature has special privileges for them because these are extremely important. So the barrier of this barrier can break down if exposed to radiation, and the toxins can travel in. Effects on the immune system, free radical generation by electromagnetic fields. Now this free radical generation, I'll talk about that a little bit. Psychological effects and effects on male fertility. The literature available on female fertility is not as much as on male fertility because it's easier to study. So we know that male fertility is definitely affected. We all know that the infertility incidence is on the rise. Children are very special. Can I go to the next one? This is what we don't know. This is what we don't know. For example, we can study the effect of radiation biologically on a rat, and a cat, and a dog by exposing him in the lab environment under known conditions. But the fields are multiple, they're random, and they're overlapping. If you're walking in the street, for example, if you enter a mall and you go from flight mode to a wireless mode, the moment you switch it on, the number of wireless options available for you to connect is unbelievable. And I have seen up to, I counted once, up to 85 wireless connections available in the biggest mall of the world. We have, it's called Dubai Mall. It's the biggest mall of the world. And there are 85 connections available, you can choose one of them. So which means what? Which means even if you are in a flight mode, there are connections which are causing radiation anyway. So even if you turn off your Wi-Fi when you sleep at night, you turn off your cell phone when you sleep at night, your neighbor's Wi-Fi is on, but that can affect you as much. So it doesn't matter if you turn off your cell phone. That's what makes you utterly hopeless. So it's like passive smoking in a way. If you're not a smoker, but you still die of lung cancer because your wife or your husband smokes, then that's what's happening. Secondly, it will be futile to tell radiation to industry what is the safe dose. They say 1.6 watts per kg. Frankly, we don't know. Even the research doesn't know what is the safe dose. The reason is this: when they keep on reducing the dose down, you still see effects. You do not see effects only if you go to the levels which are similar to what nature has, which is 18 zeros after the decimal point. At that, radiation cell phones are not going to work. So there's no point. Lastly, the research problem is who is the control. In toxicology, the model is, if you do research, the toxin exposure, the control group is here, and the subjects who are exposed to here, and then we compare the matched controls and the exposed group to find the effect. If the toxin is not given to the control group, it is given to the exposed group. What symptoms does it develop? What effects does it develop? You don't know who's the control group. You see, you can catch hold of some rats, you can catch hold of some cats, and call them a control group. You keep them in a separate cage. But there is a multiple random fields anyway, so we don't know. In fact, I asked Darius I asked him this question, and he said, I don't know. He really said, I don't know. He said, we can talk in terms of radiation effects in a controlled manner in the laboratory. You cannot talk about it, if you're walking in the street in Paris. You can't. Next one. And we don't know about the impact of 5G. We can go to the next one. Well, all those symptoms which are on top, headache, memory, which my patient had, as you know that we usually will diagnose them as an allergic disease or chronic fatigue syndrome. We sometimes investigate for hypothyroidism, sometimes for metabolic syndrome, sometimes for multiple chemical sensitivity, obstructive sleep apnea, vitamin D deficiency. If we cannot find any of which we generally don't, we find the biochemistry to be perfectly normal, then we are tempted to send them to a psychiatrist when they present with these vague symptoms. What I'm trying to say is, please consider electrohypersensitivity as a possible differential diagnosis. I'm not saying that your patient is with these symptoms is a case of electrohypersensitivity. Mine was, because when I excluded him, he returned to normal. So I have a reason to believe that my diagnosis was correct. But all I'm saying is, please keep, even at the back of your mind, that this could possibly be a reason. By the way, there are ways to determine that, because there are gadgets. I have some of my own, my personal ones, but there are gadgets available. You can go to the person's house and measure his radiation exposure. You can measure his magnetic exposure. Just like foot monitor, there are some magnetometers which you can wear in your pocket 24 hours that will tell you your magnetic exposure. It will tell you your electrical exposure. So you can compare that and come to a clear diagnosis. Can go to the next one. Okay, next one. I think we talked about that. Now, unfortunately, there are no yet lab confirmed biomarkers which would lead us to a frank and reliable diagnosis of electrohypersensitivity. But then they have found increased histamine in 40%, increased nitrotyrosine in 28%, increased protein S100B in 15%, autoantibodies against omyelin in 23%, HSP 70 and 27 in 33%. They have found reduced levels of metabolites of melatonin in urine, the blood flow to the limbic system is reduced. You know, limbic system is so quiet. Limbic system is where you've got a hippocampus, which is important for learning. And if hippocampus is exposed, then you've got dementia around the corner. And Alzheimer's, in fact, the rise of Alzheimer's in the last few decades is connected to electrification and electromagnetic radiation. There are two famous people. Rohan Brundtland, she was the director of World Health Organization at one time. She left the job prematurely, by the way. She was electro-hypersensitive. And she could tell from 10 feet if the cell phone in your pocket is on or off, because she could get the sensations. The next one, please. Oh, the next one, I think we don't get that. Now, in case of DNA, you see that the single and double strand breaks. This is beyond doubt. And I don't think I need to go into implications of what that really means. I mean, that's a tremendous finding. If you know the DNA, by the way, DNA breaks is not an unusual thing, not that it never happened before the cell phones came. DNA breaks is a common phenomenon. It happens every single day to all of us for a number of other reasons. You know, it might be that you just had your lunch at KFC and you've got a couple of strands broken. It might be that you ate pesticide-laden food and it happened to you. It might be you were exposed to ultraviolet radiation somewhere and your DNA strands were broken. But when that happens, it can also happen because of magnetic exposure from electricity. It might be happening to us right now. But when that happens to you, then there is also a mechanism for DNA repair. You see, the DNA repair happens during the night while you're sleeping because the pineal gland releases a melatonin and melatonin goes into the system and melatonin starts to repair your DNA. That's how you overcome, you undo the damage that you sustain during the day. So which is why you need to sleep. So sleep actually is an amazing thing because it is during sleep that your DNA is repairing itself. And because you sleep at night, and at night there is no ultraviolet radiation, it's only during the day, because sun sends ultraviolet radiation during the day. That is probably, I think, is the secret of nature, that nature decided to release melatonin at night when there is no ultraviolet radiation to damage the DNA. You get what I'm saying? So, DNA repair takes place when melatonin is released. Melatonin is released when the ultraviolet radiation of sun is gone, when it is dark. Now, how does the pineal gland know that it is dark outside? How does the pineal gland come to know it is time to release melatonin? Because it is dark outside. There is a mechanism for that. See, the other function of the eye, one of the functions of course vision, but retina also has got some specialized cells which have got nothing to do with the business of seeing or vision. Their business is to carry a signal when the sun is setting and the ambient light has changed. Once the ambient light, it just detects the change in light. It doesn't detect light. And that signal goes to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, from where it goes to pineal. The inside of the body has come to know that the world outside has turned dark. That is how it used to happen for 200,000 years when the sun was setting. You see, that's the importance of sunrise and sunset. When the sun sets, the pineal gland knows through the signal from the eye that outside the world has turned dark. So it's time to release melatonin. Which is why the peak of melatonin happens about 3 hours after the sunset. Which is why when it is around 3 hours after the sunset, you start feeling a little bit, droopy, a little bit droopy, a little bit sleepy. Now, the trouble. The trouble is that sunset is of no relevance anymore. Sunset is of no relevance because, sun is gone, but we have got artificial light available. We can keep awake throughout the night. Which is why, if you're sitting on your computer or working with the LCD, sending messages, or sometimes with a blanket on top of your head, if you're doing that, you
you are not letting that system kick in. You are not letting the melatonin and pineal gland kick in. And therefore the DNA doesn't repair. And the DNA doesn't repair, so the broken DNA begins to accumulate over a period of time until you develop disorder. Can I go to the next? Now these two gentlemen, Henry Lai on this side and Narendra Pal Singh from Lucknow Medical College, they were working together in Washington in 1990s, University of Washington in Seattle. They developed a technique called Comet assay to detect DNA breaks, and then this is the normal DNA on the unexposed side, and that is the DNA fragments as shown after exposing rats to radiation. Next one. Okay, next one. Now, this is lab. What happened in the lab? Does it happen out there in the community? That's what we asked epidemiologists to tell us, because they do studies with real people who have real-time disorders. There is a famous study called Interform study, which was an epidemiological study. And if what we are saying in the lab is true, then it must be happening in the community. You see, that's the point. And is it happening in the community? That's where we go to the epidemiologists, and they tell us that yes, I have not quoted references here because my slide was becoming too crowded, except the important ones. But there are references. Anybody interested? My email is on the back of my book, so you can ask me, I can give you the references. It has been known since 70s that leukemia incidence went up after rectification in people living in slums close to the power lines. And more than 10 years used on the same site, acoustic neuroma, glioma multiforme. If you are using cordless phone, even though powerful enough, the risk is 310%. Otherwise, the risk is 200%. But that is after 10 years. If you are using the ears alternately, the risk drops. Elizabeth Cardis, by the way, reported salivary gland cancer. Elizabeth Cardis was working in WHO, and she actually opposed the idea of giving, classifying it as malignant as causing problems. But in her own study, she admitted that yes, it causes parotid malignancies. The next one, please. That's glioblastoma multiforme in the middle of the brain. The very aggressive tumor caused breast. I mean, this is not uncommon in the West to keep the cell phone next to the bra. And the distribution, the topography of tumors developing in the breast have been linked to the topography of radiation that goes into the breast from there. We discussed that. Next. Yeah, next. Yeah, we go to the next. I think we talked about that. This, by the way, the one on top is a control. The one on the bottom, this is a slice of the brain of the hippocampal region after exposure to radiation. And if you see the dark spots in the hippocampus, indicate the dark neurons developing in the hippocampus as a consequence of broken blood-brain barrier. Can I have the next one? Those are once again hippocampal dark neurons. This is Selford has done a lot of work. Selford, by the way, is a contemporary. He is a neurosurgeon, and he played with this idea, in fact, for quite some time before he changed his mind. Because you see, when you're trying to deal with glioblastoma multiforme, which spreads like hell within the brain, there are drugs which can control it, but the trouble is that if you take the drugs, they do not get through the blood-brain barrier. So you cannot get build-up of the drug inside the brain. The same is true about seconivir. Seconivir is an antiviral drug used for HIV patients. By the way, this is approved by FDA. that you can break the blood-brain barrier using this radiation to get sequencer inside the brain if your patient is having HIV. I don't know how much is that, what is the ethical implications of that, but that is there. Leaf Salford was trying to, inject chemotherapeutic drugs, break the blood-brain barrier using a cell phone so that drug buildup inside the brain would kill the tumor. It didn't work. That's a separate story. But then that took him away from his original idea, and he did a lot of work which showed tremendous amount of hippocampal damage. Can I have the next one? Hippocampal damage, by the way, is a very significant thing for a child. For a child. And the babies are playing with these devices. We give these devices to babies to pacify them. We give them to play with these devices. And hippocampal damage at that age affects learning, affects behavior. I have seen a lot of kids nowadays who are extremely hyper. We have seen probably ADHD cases in women development cell. So ADHD, autism, behavioral problems, neurological problems with kids are perhaps on the rise. Autism definitely is. And electrohypersensitivity coming from cell phones is definitely a cause. Next one. Yeah. Digital dementia is a term introduced by a Korean scientist and later described by Manfred Spitzer, a German psychiatrist. This actually, they've got MRI evidence of dementia developing in a child's brain because of exposure to these devices. So they termed it as digital dementia. Their brains are unmyelinated, their metabolism is high, their skulls are thinner, and I don't know about about Mumbai, but in many countries using wireless iPad has become common in schools. Next one. Next one. Professor Om Gandhi is not a medical scientist, he's an engineer, but he was actually involved at the beginning, about 30 years ago, in developing these safety standards. He found that the extent of exposure inside the skull is much more in a 5-year-old child here compared to a 10-year-old child compared to an adult. In an adult, the exposure, the radiation field building up inside the brain is smaller. Next one. Which is why he protested that you can't have the same safety standards for children as well as adults. You've got to have different standards. Next one. And think of people, who are elderly, people who are handicapped, people who are confined, and therefore continuously exposed. Well, that says a lot. This is what we are doing actually to cause hippocampal damage in kids. There are all kinds of devices, including something called iBody, where nowadays the trendy thing to potty train a child is to use that device. The way my grandmother did, that isn't working anymore. Next one. Next one. Yeah, I think we can go to the next one. Male infertility, by the way, is another big issue that is developing, and that's because, if you keep the cell phone in these pockets. And by the way, the mechanism by which the male fertility develops, if you want to really go into the biochemistry of it, is the generation of free radicals. If you've got an idea about free radical idea came a long time ago, I think in the 60s by Herman Denham, again, not a medical scientist, but his work, his research in free radicals actually gave us the story of aging, why we age. That's why you see you have so many antioxidants prescribed nowadays. There's a whole lot of antioxidants and with increasing number of indications prescribed nowadays because the whole pharmaceutical market of antioxidants relies on the free radical theory. So free radicals are naturally generated inside the body. And free radicals refer basically to the fact that the biology of the body depends on biochemistry and chemistry depends on physics. So when you go down to the molecular level, at the atomic level, at the electron level, ultimately things that are happening inside us are at subatomic level. You see, what we observe are the gross manifestation of what is happening at a micro level. So what is that happening at a micro level are changes in the electrons. And they are the ones which determine what happens to the atom, to the molecule, to the polymer, to the tissue, to the organ, to the organism in that sequence. So we can't ignore what's happening. And now that we live in the age of not Newtonian classical physics, we live in the age of quantum physics, there is no escape from the fact that we've got to look at what's happening to the electrons inside the human body. So actually free radicals are generated at that level, unpaired atoms with unpaired electrons, which are hyperactive. And body produces free radicals, by the way. Body has its own system of free radicals and anti-free radicals. What do you call them? Antioxidants. So free radicals and antioxidant is a mechanism going on inside the body all the time. The trouble starts when the balance is upset. When there are far too many free radicals and far too low antioxidants, then the trouble starts. And this is what the radiation does. It energizes the generation of free radicals by breaking DNA to such an extent that antioxidants cannot cope with the burden of dealing with detoxifying free radicals, and that is where the cellular damage begins. For example, the cell membrane is made up of lipids, and there are calcium sitting in between those lipid molecules. The lipid comes loose, it just comes apart with the free radicals are generated. The lipid of the cell membrane just breaks apart, so the cell cannot survive. And tremendous accumulation of free radicals is actually now being linked to the fact that the autoimmune disorders are on the increase because body has got an overload of free radicals which we are not able to deal with. If those free radicals attack your own tissues, for example, they attack your joint and you've got an arthritis, they attack your skin, you've got a Sjögren syndrome, you've got SLE, you've got this and you've got that. So, free radicals. And this is what radiofrequency does. Next one, please. Next one is quite self-explanatory. Next one. In one study, they studied successive generations of rats. Fortunately, the gestation period in a pregnant rat is about 21 days. So she delivers a baby in 21 days. So we can study what happens to the next generation. And they didn't want to kill the rats. They just wanted to look what's happening inside the hippocampus and all. They just wanted to see how long they can continue to procreate. And to study the fertility, whether the fertility declines after third generation, fourth. After fifth generation, the pregnant rat, the rat did not get pregnant. So after fifth generation, the pregnancy, the ability to conceive can become negligible. Now, this happens after fifth generation. In rats, not in humans. In humans, almost 25 years have gone since the cell phones were introduced. Now, in a century, we on average have either 3 or maximum 4 generations. You see? I mean, me and my grandfather have lived in last 100 years, right? I mean, my father died in 70s, in 90s. His father died in 40s, so he was alive. So in 100 years, human beings can have 3 generations. 1 generation is passed since cell phones came in. You've got 4 more to go. So what happens by the end of this century is anybody's guess. We really don't know. And trust me, the honest scientists are really looking at that picture. That ability to conceive in human population can just go down the drain in the future. वो कहते हैं कि मुझे आएगा किसी दिन शायद यही में क्या आएगा. Next one. Next one, we talked about that. Yeah. Psychological effects, well, distraction, isolation, hyperactivity, and all that. If you see the cartoon, it says that, ironically, the pedestrian, I think, because he was on the cell phone, the same guy he was talking to this guy on the cell phone, and he hit the same guy whom he was talking to. Next one. By the way, insurance doesn't pay for medical problems coming out of cell phones. So this is a huge issue. It's not a small issue, it's a huge issue. Next one. This is not a medical thing, but then if you look at how the air pollution is measured, they measure carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, lead and hydrogen sulfide, but we do not measure electrosmog in the air pollution. So somebody has to take that up as well as a public issue that what about electrosmog? Are we measuring electrosmog in air pollution? We need to ask our government. We are a democracy. They are responsible when they make policies for our health. We accept those policies lying down without asking the question, because their counterparts, unelected members of the government, the corporations are making money. So, but we need to ask these questions that what about electrosmog? The carbon dioxide emissions, Mr. Munshi, I want your attention to this. In 1959, carbon dioxide emissions were 0.96 parts per million. It just went up by about 30 points in 40 years in 2000. In 2015, it went up to 2.92 parts per million, which is 2.5 times in last 15 years, and that after Wi-Fi came. You know, there is a direct correlation when the Wi-Fi started and the carbon dioxide. Why carbon dioxide with Wi-Fi? What it has got to do with that? It has got something to do with that, which is you need electricity to run. You know, when you use your cell phone, it's only a battery that gets consumed, and probably some rupees are deducted from your data pack. But when you download a video, the cell tower, which from where you downlink it, the servers which have the cell tower, the satellite, the whole broadband network utilizes energy, electricity. Now that electricity we have to produce to provide that electricity, because this technology is working 24 hours a day, right? It's at 24 hours a day. Even the aeroplane doesn't fly 24 hours a day, although aviation industry uses a lot of electricity. But if you compare this with other industries, it uses an incredible amount of electricity, and therefore we have to generate that. As a matter of fact, my personal view is this, that we are told that we are moving towards green world, we are moving towards solar energy, and we are told we are moving towards wind energy, and we will reduce the fossil fuels so that there will not be carbon dioxide emissions. And in the same breath, they are saying that we want to have a digital India. In the same breath. Now, if you want to have a digital India, you're going to have to triple, maybe quadruple your energy production. If you're going to do that, you can't do that with wind and solar by no chance. Because fossil fuels is an industry firmly entrenched for the last 250 years, and its production lines are clear. Solar and wind, well, it's weather dependent, and it cannot be round the year, and it will take 30-40 years before it becomes. So there is a lie, there is a fraud that's being perpetrated in my view, that they want to achieve both. They can't achieve both. They cannot have 5G, they cannot have a digital world, at the same time have what you call, reduce the greenhouse gases. That's the reason. That's the reason Donald Trump walked out of Paris climate very recently. Because he may not be right, but he's realistic. I'm sure he knows that if you walk out of Paris climate, which agreed to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, then he cannot support his co-partners in industry to produce 5G. It's a contradiction. So we are being sold a contradiction. That is the problem. Next one. That's basically the technical thing for engineers. Can I go to the next one? I just want to say one little thing, that this technology, not in hospitals, but in the streets, was used 10 years ago by the military, by the police forces to disperse the mobs. Because they don't want to use tear gas, they don't want to use water cannons, they don't want to use lathis. They want to use something which is not visible, so that mobs don't know what hit them. So from a distance, there's a mob agitating in the street. From top of a hotel building, you can fire a radiation beam, and the radiation beam will make them disperse, because the radiation beam carries waves of such a frequency which cause standing waves under the skin, and they cause burning in the skin, they cause irritation, they cause like a severe, anaphylaxis, like symptoms, and you don't know what hit you, and since it is happening to the guy next to you and the next to you and the next to you, everybody is feeling that, they start suspecting something is in the air. So they run for cover, the symptoms subside. That radio frequency energy is the same energy which is going to be used for 5G. That's the problem. This is why 5G is a problem. This is the same energy which is going to be used for 5G. So the dermatologists probably have a great future. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yeah. You know, this is the classification system the World Health Organization uses. I think you're familiar with this. To classify carcinogens. The group 1 is clearly carcinogenic, group 4 is not carcinogenic, group 3 is unclassifiable. Can I go to the next slide? Now you can't ignore this. The magnetic fields are possibly, this is World Health Organization by the way. I mean, next to God, maybe the only body that we can ask for an explanation is World Health Organization. Yeah. Next to God, that's the only body we can ask.
Can't trust them.
Sorry?
We can't trust them.
Yeah. So this is the World Health Organization. In 2002, 15 years ago, they said magnetic fields, possibly carcinogenic. What do they mean by that? Magnetic fields which are emanating from anywhere in which electric current runs. This wire has a magnetic field around it. I am standing next to it, I am absorbing it. So anything, any gadget, it need not be Wi-Fi, it need not be electronic, even a light bulb. Anything through which current runs, magnetic field runs alongside, possibly carcinogenic. So when you sleep, please pull your bed at least 2.5 feet away from the sockets in the wall, so that you are not within that magnetic field and you're safe. I don't know how many people know that vacuum cleaner causes 700 milligauss of magnetic field. The safe limit for you is 2 milligauss. The hair dryer, especially these gadgets which are directly on the body, you know, the shaver, the hair dryer, the electrical blanket, the ones which are in contact with the body are the worst offenders as far as magnetic fields are concerned. So magnetic fields, possibly carcinogenic, World Health Organization has said it 15 years ago. Electric fields, they said indeterminate on the same year. The risk of other childhood cancers cannot be ruled out, 2007. Shift work, breast cancer because of the nighttime duties, probably carcinogenic. Probably is a word stronger than possibly, probably carcinogenic. 2011, cell phone radiation, possibly carcinogenic. You know, it's a play of words. When you say, when you're saying possible, probable, you know, you're talking like a politician. You're not talking like an honest man. That's the problem. So, because what happened with this, that industry interpreted it, well, they haven't said it that it can cause cancer. They have only said, you know, you can just shrug your shoulders and walk away. Next one. Next one. Next. Yeah. These are advertisements that appeared in the Western media probably 60 or 70 years ago. We don't see similar advertisements anymore. And these are the days when cigarette packs didn't carry the label in the back, and nobody knew that smoking causes cancer. In fact, the ad said that the most doctors they prefer that particular cigarette. And if you read the fine print, you will be amazed that it says that because it cleans your lungs. So we can probably learn from the past. So many girls were on ads advertising cigarettes even then, because this meant, you know, I mean, this girl who probably modeled for this advertisement, probably in 30s or 40s, these are the times when the World War had just ended and women's liberation programs had not even started. And when if a woman was seen smoking in public, she was thought to be a prostitute. And these advertising agencies used cigarette because it was the in thing those days to bring these young beautiful girls on ads, because it actually has a role to play in women's life. Because this brought a sense of freedom in women, and they became bolder because they could smoke publicly. Next one. Anyway, that's beside the point. Now, Robert Becker is a great guy. He was recommended for Nobel Prize 3 times. I would like to read out his statement. Even if we survive the chemical and atomic threats to our existence, there is a strong possibility that increasing electropollution could set in motion irreversible changes leading to our extinction before we are even aware of them. All life pulsates in time to Earth, and our artificial fields cause a normal reaction in all organisms, plants, animals included. These energies are too dangerous to entrust forever to politicians, military leaders, and their lack of resources. The next one. We can't keep our head, like an ostrich, under the sand. Probably it's time to wake up because the writing on the wall is clear. Next one. Well, this is a long list of things. If you like, you can read it out. Basically, you have several sources where this is available. This is not the only one. So, protect yourself. Yeah, that's basically what I want to say. I'm sure most of us have that information, how to do it. If you're interested, in my book, I have devoted one whole chapter to the idea of how do you protect yourself. And actually, I raised the question that can we really protect ourselves? I mean, these are okay. You cannot. These do not, by the way, give you 100% protection. None of this gives you 100% protection, because if you're a passive smoker, you don't have effects of tobacco smoke anyway. So don't carry it on your body. Texting is safer than talking. Use air tube. Air tube is far better than earphone. Don't use it on a low battery. Avoid if the signal is poor. Don't use it in a car, in a train, because these fields, they go back and forth. If you're having a metal buckle of your belt, or if you have a keychain or coins in your pocket and your cell phone is in the pocket, even if you hold it like this, the metal of glass frame can intensify the field. Wherever there is a metal, keychain, coins, all these can, if the phone is here, they can amplify the field. So when you're sleeping, keep it as far away as possible, not like my daughter. Don't use it when you're driving. If possible, use Ethernet or corded connections for all your devices. This iPad started in Sweden, iPads in schools, and now in Sweden they're winding it up. In Sweden, they are replacing wireless iPad connectivity to wired connectivity with fiber optics, because they have realized it. And they are winding it up, and we are just beginning it. So don't use it while driving. You must not give it to a child. If you must give it to a child, put it on an airplane mode. The child can probably eat you alive if you didn't give it to him. So the least you can do it, put it on. But turn off your Wi-Fi, and if you're turning off your Wi-Fi, please persuade your neighbors to do the same. And next one. I think we're done. Well, that's my humble book. There are a few copies here. If anybody is interested, you can take them. And the book says basically what I tried